So I know it's a little bit smaller group. I anticipate we're going to have people that are going to be coming in late, and if you have to leave early, by all means, completely understand. Thank you for coming today. There is a sign-in sheet going around. Looks like this. Please make sure that you put your name and email in there, and the question of the month, we usually ask some sort of question related to the topic. Would you be interested in any basic mental health or crisis training? We're looking at working with Officer or Deputy Chief Billup, Chief Deputy Billup. I always mix up I always do that. Chief Deputy Billup and Bob Wilcox to look at potentially setting up some sort of one day, half day, depending on the need, type of training just on basic mental health and some of those de-escalation techniques that can be used. So, I don't know why I shut this, because I never can get it back open. On our agenda, and you all should hopefully have an agenda as well, on the back is our minutes from last meeting. One thing to always point out is that our YouTube channel, a lot of people don't necessarily know that we have a YouTube channel yet, so I always make sure that I start with that, that you can access all of our meetings after the fact. We record them, and the link is always on the minutes. And the agenda and the minutes are posted on the website already. But just to kind of go through the other handouts that were over there, the evaluation, this is very important to us to make sure that we're continuing to meet your needs. And if you need CEUs through the one CEU that's offered for this, make sure you fill out one that has the North Central Technical College logo at the top, also placed over there. And you can just return those all in a pile to me, and we'll separate them at the end. So as far as things to do, just to give you guys a couple policy updates, there's a number of different state policies related to alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, addiction, recovery. There's some different ones related to treatment courts, for example, that are out there proposed. A number of them have gone through both houses, including many of the recommendations from the opioid task force that the governor put out. So some of the most notable ones is, moving forward in creating a recovery high school in the state, looking at creating additional treatment programs, making the use of Naloxone at schools allowed, and that school staff would be able to administer that, and just looking at some of the addiction medicine trainings that doctors and physicians would go through. So there's a lot of things that are out there. If people are interested, I usually every day I update this, except Mondays because they don't work on Friday. So if you are interested in any of these, a couple of them that are newer that have interest in this group is that they actually proposed one specific to the social host ordinance, which, if you remember, is the ordinance here locally that would penalize anyone who provides a location for underage drinking. Last fall, a Fond du Lac court actually made that ordinance unenforceable. So there is a state law that was proposed. It is currently in the Assembly. The Senate has read it in committee, but it hasn't gone anywhere yet. I'm hopeful that it'll go through, but it is a tool that we actually use regularly in Marathon County. So it is something that's somewhat missed as a deterrent. A lot of the times people think that's related to parents providing the location. In reality, in our county, it was the younger adults. It was the 20-somethings that were hosting underage drinking parties. That's the majority of our citations. So it is something that was used here. The other thing that was included, methamphetamine is really right at the top of illicit drugs that are impacting our community. And there is an ordinance that will make, when you get pseudoephedrine from pharmacies, they actually will do an electronic record similar to what you would do for opioids. It's something that's real time, something that law enforcement, pharmacists, people would be able to see who's getting pseudoephedrine, because right now there's actually still pharmacies that just write it down in a binder and track your name, and they don't necessarily even write down your ID number. So to make it very clear, and as a way to deter the chemical that really makes meth what meth is. So lots of good policy updates. Some of the stat updates, we actually have a recovery coaching training next week. I'm going to get the date wrong. It's on the 19th from 3 till 5. 4, I believe. I don't have it on the calendar. It has gone out through the updates. We actually have secured funding for our first ever recovery coaching training. We're going to be holding that in August. It's a 4-day training. We're going to be sending out the date most likely after that meeting to make sure that we have it nailed down. We're looking for individuals that are in recovery, near individuals. It could be family members of someone in recovery, professionals that are frontline that feel that it would be valuable for them to be trained in recovery coaching. I see this as our first training, and it'll be for up to 25 people. But we're really excited. Aspirus Foundation and Aspirus's Community Benefits is providing the funding for that. Sober living, we actually had a meeting, small group of us really looked at what we have currently available, and Ranlin Homes is really our only option. When you look at sober living facilities, they're not perfect. They do their best with what they have, and they're going to be looking at doing a rebranding just because there's some negative perceptions about how Ranlin was, and it's hurting, I think, how Ranlin is now. So they're going to be looking at changing some things up. So if you're interested in kind of being part of that discussion, I know that they're going to be reaching out to folks to kind of help with that process. I'm also very excited to say that Step Industries, the transitional work site, has been in Marathon County now twice in the last couple weeks and will be again in June. Step Industries is a transitional work site in the Neenah area as well as one in Milwaukee, and they do great work working with individuals that are coming out of jail, coming out of treatment, maybe have felonies that prohibit them from getting meaningful employment. But it's just a fantastic location. So we're really excited to have them coming back again in June, on June 20th, for a business meeting to work specifically with business leaders to look at what possibilities we have to bring them here. So that's kind of some of those opportunities that are happening. And as far as what's included in the announcements, some of the partner updates to point out is that I'm not for sure how many times it's been in Wisconsin, and Chad can correct me, but the National Drug Endangered Children Conference, which Drug Endangered Children is going to be part of our discussion here today, the conference is going to be held in August here in Green Bay. And the cost for in-state registration, $75 compared to $250 for out-of-state. There's scholarships that are available for the rooms. I would recommend if you are interested in going and looking for a scholarship for room, you register as soon as possible because things are getting full. But there's a lot of great speakers, and it's not just, it's not necessarily just a law enforcement perspective. There's a number of different sectors that I think would benefit from going to this training. And Chad can talk about it a little bit more when he comes up here for his part if he feels he'd like to. Western Marathon County, the next meeting is going to be in July. They actually changed the date to a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. So it's just something to take note. I haven't seen any agenda or anything yet or the location, but that'll come out through the updates. The Mount Calvary Lutheran is partnering with AIDS Resource Center to host another free Naloxone training. Any individuals looking to get trained in the use of Naloxone, otherwise known as Narcan, you can actually go and get trained for free, and then they do give you 3 doses as you leave. Last I knew, they both have the intravenous version that you would use in shooting muscle tissue, or they have the nasal versions that are available. So you would be certified to be able to, or you would be trained and then given those doses to be able to utilize it if necessary. I'm going to skip the poverty one, and then I'll have Ted come up. There is an ESPERT training. ESPERT is an evidence-based screening tool that can be used in a variety of different settings. Training coming up in next week, as well as the 22nd. To my knowledge, there's still openings at both of these. It is a free training. You do get CEUs. So it is something that's pretty awesome that we're able to have here. And the speaker, Dr. Rich Brown, is phenomenal. So if you have any interest in this, I would recommend trying to attend one of these trainings. They are offered once in a while, so you'll probably see it come out again, but it's a good opportunity. Hopefully your Junes are light. If you missed the Substance Abuse It's Everybody's Business Conference on May 16th, all the videos, all the handouts, a number of other resources are available at the WIPS site now. So if you saw a specific speaker, whether it was the business perspective, addiction as a brain disease, there's a doctor, Chris Johnson, that talked about how physicians are really the source of the problem of the opiate epidemic. I hear he was fantastic. I didn't get to hear him personally. I see some head nods. But there's a variety of different great speakers. So it's all recorded. It's all on there. You can view the segments and share them. And like I said, again, we do have a YouTube channel for AOD Partnership. So any of our past meetings, you can always go back to there. Northwoods Coalition was unable to attend today. We'll probably move them to a future agenda to talk a little bit about who they are and what they do. And with that, Ted, did you want to come up here and talk at all about the Poverty Summit, or did you? That would be awesome.
On June 14th, there'll be another poverty simulation at G.D. Jones Elementary School from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. I participated in April for the first time. Boy, what an eye-opener, and talk about confusion, initially adjusting to the simulation and things, but a lot of teachers from the Wausau School District attended that one and came away with sitting there, why are we doing this? Because of the effects it has on children, and a very worthwhile experience. I'll be participating on June 14th also, but I get to be one of the people running one of the little shows. So encourage you to attend if you haven't.
So they're looking for participants to go through as an individual in poverty, to go through the simulation, and they're also looking for volunteers, if you have gone through something like this, for people to work at or represent like the pawn shop, social services, law enforcement, you name it. So there's different kind of areas that they're looking for people to kind of play that role as well. So if you are interested, if you are available that day, definitely recommend it. It is an evidence-based poverty simulator, so it's not just something that they put together. It's something that there's definitely some backing on. So definitely check that out. Pretty excited that they're around. Is there any other partner updates that anybody has? No? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then get right into our session. As I said, we're going to have a couple people, due to chaos ensued today. I got a number of individuals, so we kind of shuffled around our order for our presenters. So if it looks a little bit haphazard, I do apologize. But we do have a great slate of people here to talk. With us currently, we're going to start with Sam Pinzel at the Health Department. She actually heads up our Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs, work in the community. She's going to talk a little bit about not only what ACEs are, run us through an exercise. She's going to show a video, but she's also going to hint to kind of what's happening around ACEs. So if this is something that you're interested in, I'm sure she'd love to have you involved. We also are going to have Sarah Walder, who is a nurse practitioner in the prenatal ICU. She's going to talk about prenatal exposure to substances and its impact on children, and then how it impacts them and the mother postnatal as well. And then we have Chad and Krista are going to talk about the Drug Endangered Children Task Force and some of the things that program does in our community, is just responding to addiction in the home and protecting children. And then we also are going to have Jen Smith, who's part of the Marathon County School-Based Counseling Consortium, who's looking at increasing access to treatment in schools, and talk about kind of where they were and where they're going. And she can talk a little bit more who's part of that group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam and get her PowerPoint up. Bigger, down, up, go down, go nuts. That's not mine, that's yours.
So as Melissa said, my name is Samantha Pinzel, and I'm a public health educator for the Marathon County Health Department. I facilitate our Adverse Childhood Experiences Collaborative Initiative. This is a relatively new group that started meeting in January that came out of our Community Health Improvement Plan. ACEs was identified as one of our top community priorities. So today I'll go over what ACEs are, and I apologize, this is probably a review for most of you in the room. So I'll just do a little refresher on that. How ACEs can impact child brain development I'll touch on, And then I'll go over some statistics specific to what we see here in Wisconsin. So when there's substance abuse or addiction present in a home, and there's a child in the home, and adverse childhood experience is present, ACEs are any type of traumatic experience that occurs in children under the age of 18 that can potentially hinder their normal, healthy childhood development. So doctors Anda and Felitti did the original ACE study out of Kaiser Permanente in the early 1990s. And the three broad categories they looked at in their study participants were abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So within abuse, that could be sexual, physical, or emotional. Neglect could be physical or emotional neglect of a child. And then household dysfunction are things like someone in the household who is incarcerated or using substances or is an addict, having someone in the household with a mental illness, or suicidal, chronic depression, things like that. Witnessing violence in the home, so not necessarily being the victim of the abuse, but even witnessing it, as well as parental separation or divorce. Now, I get the question a lot, aren't there other traumatic events? Of course there are. Studies have come out now even showing that witnessing violence often in your neighborhood or in your community can be an ACE. Racism, historical trauma, poverty, all of those are definitely ACEs. So it's important not to get too hung up on what the actual event is, but the impact that it has. So something that might be more traumatic for me may not be as traumatic for somebody else. So it's more important to focus on the impact rather than what the specific event is. So there's a growing field of study called epigenetics, and this really studies how our lived experiences from the time of conception can actually physically alter our gene expression. So a mother who is pregnant, if she is living in chronic toxic stress, she's frequently scared for her safety, or she has the stress of not knowing where her next meal will be. All of those can actually alter what genes are turned on or off in utero. It doesn't change your genome that you were conceived with, but it changes that gene expression. And this is different than, first time mom, oh, I'm anxious or nervous about motherhood. This is that chronic toxic, dangerous stress that can do this. So here's a picture of neurons or brain cells. On the far left, we see what neurons might look like at the time of birth. So very primitive. Babies are born with neural networks only for what they need at that time, a suckling reflex or things like that. By the time they reach 5 or 6 years of age, that elementary age, they have formed so many different neural networks, and you can see how much it has grown. This process is called branching, and our experiences are what helps these branches to form. In the last section, this would be around 13, 14 years old, start of puberty. You can see that there's less. So between elementary age to puberty, our neurons start to get pruned away in a process called pruning. The experiences that we have most often are the neural networks that stick. That's what does not get pruned away. Less frequent experiences do get pruned away, and this is why an ACE such as neglect can be so impactful on a child's development. These first 5 years from conception to birth really are the most critical time period in that brain development when those neurons are forming. We can start to see disparities in language by the time children are 18 months old, and they've been able to measure cortisol or stress hormone levels in as young of children as 7 months old. You can already start to see that they have sustained cortisol levels, that stress hormone. So really what kids need those first 5 years is at least one adult who's absolutely crazy about them and shows it. That's how you form healthy kids in those first 5 years. So here we have two different worlds. The top track is dangerous, full of that toxic stress, mean, chaotic, nothing is stable. And the bottom world is the benevolent world, where it's kind and generous and safe. Traumatic experiences develop what world a child lives in, and these worlds can create predictable patterns. And what's important about the fact that it's predictable is that that means it can be preventable. So humans are only made to be under stress for about 20 minutes at one time. Like you've heard the bear in the woods story that, fight, flight, or freeze. That's really what our whole stress system is meant to do. So children living in this chronic stress, they always have those elevated cortisol levels. They never know what to expect. They feel afraid. And this, as those neurons and those neural networks form, this is what basically sculpts a child's brain. Is the child prepared to fight, flight, or freeze? Or is the child prepared to be cooperative and listen and feel safe and responsive? So when our biology collides with social expectations with ACEs, this is really when we start to see the issues. So for that child who is wired to be hypervigilant, to fight or to run, when we place them into like a school setting and we expect them to sit still, wait patiently, listen, share, cooperate, those are all times when we see the problems start to arise. Likewise, a child who grew up in that benevolent, kind, safe world, I know for myself, if you put me into a burning building and say rescue the people, I would be panicked. My brain is not wired for that. So for people whose brains aren't wired for that but have professions in that area like law enforcement, firemen, ER physicians, we have very specific training to get them prepared for that type of world. Likewise, we need to deliver clear expectations and help children who are wired to be in that fight, flight, or freeze mode to adapt and become resilient so that they can thrive and have success in normal social situations. So I'm going to pause here and we're going to do a short activity. So we are going to do a word search and I'll need you to partner up. Hopefully there's two for everyone. You might have to go with someone back there. If you want to help me pass these down. And we only need one word search per pair. So you don't need two. Next to each other. And then I have envelopes that have prompts in it. There's an A and a B. One partner needs to pick a prompt from the A envelope and one from the B. Do not tell each other what your prompt says. Just follow the prompt and complete the word search. We'll work on this for a couple minutes, and then we'll debrief. So just pick an A and a B and pass it along. Okay, we can come back together. Why don't you go ahead and share your prompt with your partner to see what you were supposed to do.
But you were living out there.
Okay, so for the people who had the one about being startled, so at some point your partner was going to startle you and you could not react. How did you feel doing that exercise?
I felt like I couldn't focus because I was too worried about what she was going to make me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And not just the jumping, the I can't react, I have to. Mm-hmm. Yep. And what about the people who were giving the kind, encouraging words? Did you notice that all your partner being kind of like, why are you being so nice to me? So what this is supposed to simulate is how a child might feel at school or church, some type of setting where their brains are wired to be hypervigilant. They're expecting someone or something, to startle them, to not be stable, and then paired with that societal pressure to not react, to sit there. And then, from a teacher's perspective, you might be trying to be very encouraging and supportive, and you can't really understand why, the child still might not be very receptive. That encouragement can almost even put them on edge even more, because they're like, can I trust you? Can I not? So, so here we have the ACE pyramid, which is a model. Before the original ACE study, the leading understanding at that time of health issues were really focused on the top 3 portions of this pyramid. So you adopt health risk behaviors, this results in disease and leads to early death. Doctors Anna and Felity were, they realized that something was missing, because groups of people had these certain elements of the top 3 portions of the pyramid. They weren't random. They were almost clustered and predictable. So at the bottom of the pyramid represents ACEs, and what their study showed is how ACEs can disrupt that normal neurodevelopment, which leads to that social, emotional, and cognitive impair, similar to what you've kind of just experienced. This can lead to that adoption of health risk behaviors, disease, and then early death results. So an example of this could be, a child living in a home where the parents are addicted to drugs or alcohol, and constantly witnesses the father's violence. Those are the ACEs. The brain is wired to be hypervigilant, so the child can't form relationships in school and often feels isolated, that social impairment. The child starts smoking and using other substances to feel a sense of belonging, finds a group of people that he fits in with. That's that adoption of health risk behavior. Later in life gets lung cancer and early death results. You could throw in an unintended pregnancy in there. That child sees the parents, and the cycle continues. Research shows that a person having 6 or more ACEs can lead to 20 years of potential life loss in that individual. So we also know that if someone has one type of ACE, there's an 87% likelihood that they have at least one more ACE. So if you have a brother or father in prison, it's very rare that everything else at home is totally fine and hunky-dory and normal. We also know that women are 50% more likely to have 5 or more ACEs than men. So in Wisconsin, 57% of Wisconsin residents have at least one ACE. When looking specifically at household dysfunction, about 1 in 4 Wisconsin residents grew up with someone in the house who struggled with substance abuse. And then you can see some of the other parental divorce, almost the same, violence. And then we also know that people with 4 or more ACEs, they smoke at rates that are double the Wisconsin average. Tobacco is one substance that's very often used by people with high ACEs. I was listening to a presenter at the Trauma Informed Symposium last April, and he was a former addict in long-term recovery, and he said, if we're going to talk about a gateway drug, it would be tobacco. But more than the drug, the gateway is people. That group of people you find that you belong to and you connect with and you feel loved by. Here's individual ACEs and smoking rates. So you can see there's a large disparities that exist within tobacco use. So the current adult smoking rate is 17%, and you can see how much higher those smoking rates are. So for those who abuse drugs, 36% smoke. Of those incarcerated, 44% smoke. Only 1% of current tobacco users are the middle-class white Americans. Very few of them smoke still. Here's just some numbers on ACE distribution by race and ethnicity. You can see based on the number of ACEs as they increase as well. And lastly, here's a slide on household income. So we know that the lower the household income is, there's typically more ACEs present. So just to review, I have a short video, which Melissa, you might have to help me with.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease? If your mother had a drinking problem when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression as an adult? Here's what you should know about ACEs. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, extremely stressful events that can happen to a child growing up. Some experiences are so stressful that they can alter brain development, as well as the immune system, increasing the risk of lifelong health and social problems in adulthood. The term comes from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, landmark research that shed new light on the root cause of everything from stroke and liver disease to substance abuse and mental illness. In the late 1990s, an epidemiologist from the Centers for Disease Control and a preventive medicine doctor at Kaiser Permanente set out to understand the association between childhood experience and lifelong health. They asked over 17,000 people in the Kaiser Health Plan in San Diego about their health history, as well as difficult questions about their experiences growing up. Anda and Felitti tallied up 10 different kinds of adversity in this largely middle-class and college-educated population. They were stunned to see how common ACEs were. 21% of all respondents were sexually abused as children. 19% grew up with someone who suffered mental illness. 28% had been physically abused. And 2 out of 3 respondents had experienced at least one ACE. The researchers next looked at how someone's ACE score, or the number of adversities they experienced, related to a wide array of serious health and social problems. They saw that the more ACEs someone had, the greater their risk for poor outcomes compared with someone with no ACEs. Someone with an ACE score of 4 had twice the risk of heart disease and cancer. Someone with an ACE score of 5 had an 8 times greater chance of being an alcoholic. And those with an ACE score of 6 or more, on average, died 20 years earlier. With every major problem they looked at in the ACE study, the risk went up for each additional adverse experience in childhood. As Dr. Robert Anda says, what's predictable is preventable. It's important to remember that ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are a tool for understanding the health of a population as a whole. For individuals, an ACE score can be a tool for understanding their own risk for health and social problems, and empower them to make changes for themselves and their children. ACEs tend to get passed down from generation to generation and are common across all income levels, races, and cultures. But increasingly, people of all different professions and backgrounds are coming together to discuss how ACEs affect their communities. They're finding new ways to treat and prevent ACEs. Many doctors are starting to screen their patients for ACEs as part of their medical history. More schools are becoming trauma-informed, considering the source of problem behavior when disciplining their students, instead of immediately suspending or expelling them. To learn more about interrupting the cycle of adversity and improving health and well-being for the next generation, please visit kpjrfilms.co.
Okay, so just really quickly, some ways to connect in our community. Like I said, I facilitate that ACES collaborative initiative. We meet monthly. I'll pass around a sign-up sheet. You can either be linked in via email if you want, or I can send you more information on how to actually attend the meetings. Some discussions we've been having in the work plan. So currently we're mapping who's all received an ACE interface training in our community, as well as any trauma-informed care practices they've implemented. We are starting to explore different ways to improve the referral process into our mental health providers in the area. We have a work group for that. And then we've had the discussion on looking into how a school is notified in the event that a parent might have been arrested or something happened the night before, just so that they can be prepared when the child goes to school the next day. If your organization's interested in an ACE interface training, we have 6 certified trainers in our county. If you go to healthymarathoncounty.org and click on the ACES tab, there'll be a form that you can fill out right there with your training requests, and it'll get sent to the inbox of all of those trainers. So any questions now, later?
Questions.
Okay.
And why don't we have Chad and Chris to go up now? Transition, shift gears.
And you guys don't have to stay like behind the podium, but stay around the podium because
I'll start us off. My name is Chad Dolb. I'm the Chief Deputy at the Sheriff's Office.
I'm Krista Jensen. I'm the CPS supervisor at Marathon County.
And we are here to talk to you a little bit about I'll talk a little bit about Marathon County Drug Endangered Children Program, the Wisconsin Drug Endangered Children Program, and the National Drug Endangered Children Program. Back in 2005, Wisconsin started an initiative in order to get every county somehow involved in preparing officers, social workers, corporation counsel, probation agents, to address the needs of children when we go into homes. So I was in the drug unit back in 2005 when this initiative started. And I will tell you that from a drug investigator's perspective, I thought, why are we telling these social workers which houses we're going into? I don't know Krista from Adam. And I'm supposed to tell Krista that I've got a search warrant planned tomorrow and she's working with the people at home. How do I know she's not going to go in the home before me, say something that's going to tip them off, and then when I hit the house, either the drugs aren't there, the money's not there, or somebody's waiting for me, call it the boogeyman, when I come through the door. So there had to be a shift in the law enforcement perspective as to how we engage our partners before we go into these homes. So in about 2007, Marathon County decided that DEC was something that we wanted to pursue. And at that time, I was still an investigator in the drug unit, transitioning into a leadership role, and I was asked to start the DEC program in Marathon County. And at that time, we had meetings with social services, the health department, corporation counsel, probation and parole, Aspirus, St. Clair's. I'm probably missing other people, but there were a lot of them. We had judges involved, and we came up with a protocol that we now use anytime that we are doing an investigation or social services is doing an investigation, to let our partners know there are kids in this home, there are specific needs that are not being met, and we need to deal with the problem. Sometimes there's a legal grounds for law enforcement to get into the home. When there's not, we hope that social services has legal grounds to get into the home. So we drafted a protocol, and now what this might look like is our investigators are out, they're doing their investigation. Through the course of their investigation, they find out that there are 3 or 4 kids in the home. It used to be when we did a search warrant at those homes, we would hit it, the kids would sit on the couch, and we'd have an officer standing next to the kids while the rest of them are tearing the house apart. Mom and dad are in handcuffs, sitting there sometimes next to the kids, sometimes they're being interviewed in the kitchen. And we're left with, now what do we do? So then I call Krista. Hey Krista, I'm in the house. I've got these 4 kids here. What do you want me to do with them? And she's saying, well, I really wish you would have called me yesterday because I could have had a plan in place yesterday to deal with it. So what it looks like today is that phone call goes out first. I call Krista and I say, Krista, I've got a search warrant tomorrow. It's at this home. I believe you are already working with the family. What time are those kids going to school? And she says, well, they're at this elementary school. The class time is this. So when do you think I'm going to do my warrant? After the kids leave for school. That's when I'll do my search warrant. So the kids are not present in the home, so they don't have that enhanced trauma that we had been doing in the past. There still is the connection with social services where they have to go in and do their thing, but law enforcement tries to do it without the kids present. We also now have a connection with our corporation counsel, who often does all the legal paperwork surrounding the custody of the children, and we have extra steps in place that we look at more of the trauma that the children are involved in. What's the new one that they're currently working on? I've got something I just opened up there. Emotional damage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a statute that I didn't even know existed until like 3 weeks ago on emotional damage, that now they're taking action on those and referring those over to social services so that they can do more with them. So that's the Marathon County level. I told you this all started back in 2005. As of a month ago, 46 of our 72 counties have some sort of a DEC program. Not everyone is doing it. The Northwoods really is a leader in this, and right now Marathon County is the county in the state that everyone looks to, and we are also the state in the nation that everyone looks to. The reason that we are hosting the National DEC Conference in Green Bay in August is because Wisconsin is seen as the most progressive state when it comes to dealing with drug-endangered children issues. It used to be Colorado, but with a loss of leadership there, they have kind of slid off, and now they're coming to us in order to lead the initiative. We have an annual statewide DEC conference. We are holding our statewide conference in conjunction with our national conference this year. It is in Green Bay, and we're bringing in speakers from all across the country. There's a lot of doctors coming in, law enforcement, social workers. Krista is presenting at the national conference, and it's a great opportunity to meet people and see what's going on across the country. So I'll let you talk a little bit about what you guys do.
Sure. So really just piggybacking off of what Chad said. So when we receive reports at social services that there may be drug use in the home, historically we would not have contacted law enforcement. We would have kind of gone out to that home on our own, checked things out, got ourselves in the middle of the situation. Right? So now what happens is we receive these reports of child abuse or neglect, specifically in regards to drugs. We're contacting law enforcement before we're making any sort of contact with the family. What sort of history do you have with this family? How can we plan? Can we plan your warrant for when the children are going to school? If that absolutely can't happen, then social workers are present at the home with law enforcement to take those children out of the home while everything is going on around them to prevent them from having to be in the middle of this and experiencing adverse childhood experiences. Seeing all of that violence, seeing all of that trauma, seeing their parent very escalated because of this situation is not healthy for these children. So we're coming in, and if we have that heads up, we can look at what history do we have, who do we know that this child is connected to, what family members do they have. So in the event when the warrant takes place and the parents are arrested, we're not spending 5-6 hours looking for a placement for this child, hopefully with relatives. We'll have something pre-planned in our heads. Obviously we can't make that call ahead of time, but we'll know we have dad that lives in Green Bay, we have grandma that lives in Eagle River, and we have aunt that lives in Tomahawk. So we have 3 people we know right away we can contact to get them out there. We're doing a lot of work with these children, doing forensic interviews at the Child Advocacy Center. Our hope is to interview children one time and no more. We know that when children are interviewed over and over and over, they start to think about, what do they want me to say? Why are they interviewing me so many times? Maybe what I said the first time isn't what they wanted to hear, so I'll change it the second time. So really, if we can do one interview with somebody who's specifically trained to interview these children, it's videotaped, law enforcement is present, the district attorney's office is present, the women's community is present, they have an advocate that works with the children and the non-maltreating parent to help provide them services and support. Really, so we're all coming together to do this comprehensive assessment with the family and determine what the children and the family need so that they can then become reunified together and can function in our community as productive members of our community.
So I stated before, Krista and one of the detectives from from the Sheriff's Office are presenting at the national conference. It's not often that the national conference, it's never come to Wisconsin. So I think last year it was down in New Orleans. So this is a great opportunity for anybody who wants to see what national DEC, Wisconsin DEC, and your local DEC is all about, to go to a closed conference for $75. You can drive back and forth, or you can stay there. We're actually doing a tour of Lambeau and a tailgate party at Lambeau Field. So we've got representation from across the state. I sit on the statewide committee for drug endangered children. And I think that what people often think is the DEC program is a team or a unit. It's more of a policy or a protocol that a community adopts. And as a statewide representative, I'm there. I've gone to other counties in order to tell them how we do things here in Marathon County and help them build their program. I was just in Taylor County a year ago or so and helped Taylor County through the developing of a protocol, sent them protocols, mock protocols from across the state so that they could come up with a plan of their own. And what will work for them may not work for us, and what works for us may back and forth. Every community is different.
Part of that protocol also includes medical evaluations for these children who are in these homes where drugs, specifically methamphetamine, is a very high need in our community. Drugs are being used, children are exposed to that. So we're bringing those children for a medical exam within 24 hours to be evaluated to ensure that they are safe and healthy, they don't have any drugs in their system, and that this isn't going to be a revolving problem for them. So we're addressing that right away too, which historically wasn't happening as well.
I have some materials that I left over on the other table that describe what our program is and how you can get a hold of us. There's also a flyer. This is a bit older. This young lady is actually one of our captain's daughters. She graduated from high school yesterday, on Sunday. So these have been around for a while. These kids are actors on here. You just notice some new faces and old faces. But if you have any questions about DEC or how DEC can help you, please reach out to me or to Krista, and we're more than happy to walk you through it.
Thank you. Okay, now we have Jen Smith from Bridge Clinic. She's going to talk a little bit about I think is a really exciting initiative about school-based behavioral health services. So she'll give you an update on kind of where they were and where they're going. And she's doing this on short notice, so she needs like
really short notice
in the world, like less than 2 hours notice.
Good afternoon. I'm Jen Smith. As Melissa said, I'm the executive director over at Bridge Community Health Clinic. For those of you who don't know, we're an FQHC, or federally qualified health center, and we provide medical, behavioral health, and dental services. As Melissa also shared, Lee Shipway, who's the co-director of Peaceful Solutions Counseling, a nonprofit counseling agency in the area, was slated to be your presenter today and unfortunately was not able to come and sends her regards. But we've been working collaboratively on building this school-based counseling consortium, so I wanted to come and just give you an update. So in looking down the agenda and hearing some of the other speakers that I came in on the tail end of, when we think about all of the things that kids in our communities are experiencing, whether it's drug abuse or alcohol abuse or other abuses in the home, ACEs, all of that wraps up together, where this shows up is in school. And so we have a lot of kiddos in our school districts in our large Marathon County that are really struggling. And school is where they spend the majority of their time. And this is where behaviors show up. This is a place where they often fall apart. This is a place where they need some additional supports. And so if you know anyone or you yourself work in the schools, this is something that has been a really hugely identified need for years. And we're very excited that we're at the point of building this consortium and a partnership so that we can start addressing some of these and really meeting these kids where they are. Because the reality of having them always in a functioning family environment with or without insurance, what have you, that are going to get them to a scheduled counseling appointment, the likelihood of that is pretty low. Or for that to be an ongoing offering and support for them, the reality of that may be pretty low. So a couple of years ago, Lee and Peaceful Solutions actually started a collaboration with the Edgar School District. And Edgar called her up one day and said, we really, really need some help in our schools. Is there any way that you could provide some counseling? They happen to have a therapist who was living at Edgar and still is. And they said, yeah, we think we can do this. So they were kind of the very early pilot of this process in our county that worked fairly well. So last year, at the tail end of the year, Lee decided to go ahead and get together a group of partners from around our area, for-profit and nonprofit agencies, the schools, other community partners such as the United Way, some of the other collaborations that are working on things that are impacting youth, and just threw out an invitation and said, let's get around a table and talk about what else we could be doing. And so what shook out of all of that now, just 6 months later, is the school-based counseling consortium. So we have, and the reason that we really wanted to explore this is also based on something I want to mention in terms of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. How many of you are familiar with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey? Can you, just so I don't totally repeat myself, okay. For those of you that aren't, it is a survey that is done in this past cycle, which would have been 2015. All 10 school districts in Marathon County participated. And it is a survey in kids' own words, high schoolers specifically, which will be expanded to middle and high school in the 2017 survey. All sorts of topics that are important to them. What are they thinking about drugs, alcohol, healthy weight, healthy behaviors, unhealthy behaviors, and their mental health? If you look at the mental health piece, alone, 28.8% of these high school students said that they have poor mental health days, significant poor mental health days in that survey period. That's almost 30% of our kids, and that's a lot. So one of our goals is to really make an impact and to, again, to bring services to them so that we can start improving that number and giving them supports where they are. So the group got a little bit smaller over the last few months, but we're at a point where we have about 6 nonprofit counseling agencies, one for-profit counseling agency who said, I might not be able to do the services and because of the billing and all of this kind of stuff, there's a lot of complications for them, but I can offer this. I can offer education to school staff. I can offer education to the student body at large. So it's really a testament to how this community works, and to come together and to say, okay, we can do this. So we developed this based on also the Marathon County Health Improvement Plan. So the CHIP plan, as it is also called, this is the first time that we have had the top 3 issues identified all revolving around either AOD, mental health services, ACEs. So this is obviously a widespread, recognized, well-documented need in our community. So we took a look at that as well. This program dovetails nicely into that. There's a Marathon County Behavioral Health Changemakers grant that the health department earned, and that is through the Medical College of Wisconsin. That is a grant that is helping to support mental health services and improvement in mental health for kids that are in grades 6 through 12. So there's quite a bit of overlap with that Youth Risk Behavior Survey. There's also a partnership for youth K through 3 truancy reform pilot. They have been doing a lot around identifying those high need schools where truancy is really becoming an issue and starting to try to work way, way upstream. So from a public health standpoint, that means the earlier we can intervene, the better outcome we're going to have down here. So that pilot has started working also with the school-based counseling consortium to say, okay, as we look at with the school districts and triage which schools can we start in, how does this truancy piece inform that as well? So it's really trying to align all of those separate groups and goals into working on this collaboratively to make the biggest impact. So we decided to do this as a consortium for a lot of reasons. One is that there is absolutely no way that one agency or two agencies or even probably 10 agencies in our area can meet the need. We did some research based on enrollment numbers and in a lot of conversation with the schools and said, okay, 28.8% of kids are saying that they have poor mental health. Are 28.8% of enrolled students in all of the schools really going to participate in counseling services? Because as agencies, we need to know, what do we need to hire to try to staff this program? So after a lot of looking at other models, there's a model in Minnesota, there is a model in Hortonville called the E3 model. We looked at a lot of these and we decided that this is what our program is going to look like, and it's a three-prong approach. It is direct services to the students, it is education and support for school staff, it is also education to the student body at large. That's really a social norming piece so that we get kids talking about the fact that it's okay if you are not feeling very mentally healthy, because here are some things that you can do. You can reach out, here's some support in the school, here's some support some other places. And then also education to the parents so that they're aware of the program, but also that social norming piece so that maybe they're asking, you know, if their kids are really doing okay and if they need some supports. So we looked at all of those models. We decided that we would initially look at what would it look like from a staffing perspective if we were to meet 12% of the enrolled students' needs, potentially. Looking specifically at Wausau and DC Everest, because those are the two largest districts, because we have to start this as a pilot and kind of roll it out. 12% of the students' needs would equate to a 40.2 FTE. I'm just going to let you chew on that number for a second. 40.2. There is no way that one single agency or even our small consortium can meet that 40.2. So not all is lost, but it really shows you how deep the need could be, and that's a very conservative estimate. So what we're going to do for this first year, which we do plan to roll this out in the fall, is to work with what are considered really Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools. Those are schools that were identified by the school district as at highest need, highest risk, and then we're going to continue to work as a consortium to try to hire more and more and more licensed therapist staff to be out in the schools. So all of us have looked at that within our budgets. All of us are starting recruiting, and it's going to really take a community effort to try to look at how do we make this community a community where we can actually attract those professionals to be, because there probably aren't 40.2 licensed professional therapists out there who are just going to jump on the bandwagon and provide supports in schools. So that's where we're going to start. The other reason we did this is, and being a consortium, that really does give us a real common ground to work from. We have developed a consortium agreement so that is between all of the partner agencies, that we're all operating with shared understanding and under the same rules. We have also developed, and it's being approved today actually at our large group consortium meeting, a Memorandum of Understanding that will be signed between the provider agency and the school and district in which they're providing services. And we really wanted to give that to the schools, because one of the things that we heard loud and clear is that the schools said, if a therapist comes to us and knocks on the door and says, hey, I heard about this, I want to provide some therapy in your school, how do the schools know that this person is licensed, that this person has worked with kids, that this person is going to operate under the same shared agreements that the rest of us have? So the schools were really interested in having a way for us to kind of vet providers for them. So this is an exclusive arrangement so that any agency who wants to participate needs to be part of the consortium in order to provide counseling services in the schools. And we wanted that because it's going to make it seamless. We wanted it seamless for the schools. We wanted it seamless for the kids, so that if they're transferring in and out of different schools or in between districts, it's the same paperwork, it's the same type of therapy services, it's the same agreements, and it would be seamless for the parents as well. And it really also gives us some power for advocacy. So advocacy is a big part of this consortium agreement, and it's going to become even more important. One of the barriers that we have right now is a little thing called DHS 35 and DHS 75. So those are the certifications from the state of Wisconsin when you are providing outpatient mental health services and outpatient AOD services. So 35 is outpatient mental health counseling, and DHS 75 is the AOD piece. And there is a real AOD component in this school-based counseling. So we do have 2 agencies that are part of the consortium that can provide that service as well, which is great. Because it will become apparent. So in order to be a DHS 35 or 75 approved agency, you have to have similar policies, you have to meet all the statutes, all the regulations, and all of our agencies for the most part are DHS 35 certified. If we establish then a satellite clinic in a school, in order for it to be DHS 35 certified, we have to pay additional fees, certify it as a satellite clinic, go through the same process, blah, blah, blah. We are asking the state to consider, as a consortium, that if the home agency office is DHS 35 certified, that certification extend to the satellite office in the school. And that's really critical, because if that does not happen, this program can't be very fluid. So if I suddenly stumble upon a 1.0 FTE who says, hey, I want to join Bridge Clinic and start doing counseling in the schools, I can't just easily add on that extra school because I have to go through the certification process. Now, there were some changes a few years ago that said you don't have to be DHS 35, you do have to be DHS 75, but you don't have to be DHS 35 certified in order to provide counseling in the schools. But the insurers on the other side will say, oh yes you do, or we're going to deny your payment. So we're working with DHS in how can this look so that it can be a program that works, so that it can be a program that's fluid, so that we can add sites and remove sites as needs change within the school districts. So advocacy is really a big part of also why we went with a consortium agreement, because we definitely have a need for that. So next steps, we are adopting again the MOU today, and that's a lot of work. This is a lot of work to come up with in 6 months, actually not quite 6 months, and to have all these different agencies sitting around the table willing to say, yes, we're gonna make this work, and it's been a yes we can, not never a yes but, which has been really amazing. Completing the consortium agreement. Next up, we're assigning agencies to schools. So taking a look at, okay, who can put people here, who can put people here, so the agencies will be working on those assignments. Most of us have just gotten it approved through our budgets to expand our FTEs. I know that Bridge Clinic's board just approved our budget last couple weeks ago at the board meeting, so now we can start recruiting for this, which is great. Finalizing all the program form tools, all those things. We're going to have shared assessment tools, shared enrollment forms, shared referral forms, and again, so that that's seamless, whether we're talking the consortium agencies or even other agencies that we might be referring in or out to, recognizing that there are some times that we will find kids that doing a high level of trauma work in the school setting is not appropriate. So we may need to be referring them either within our agencies or to other agencies for that care. And just think about it this way. You don't peel the layers on heavy trauma work and then send the kid to math class. So, you know, there may be, right, we wouldn't do that at our work. We wouldn't, you know, go to a therapy session and really dig deep and then go present at a board meeting. So that's a big part of how we've designed this program, to be really mindful of what those kids appropriately can take on in school in terms of therapy. And then, again, ongoing discussions with the Department of Health Services. So there's some work around that. There are quite a lot of discussions with funders Some of our agencies are really going to struggle to participate if there isn't some offsetting of expenses. Not all of us are the same. Bridge Clinic is perfectly set up to be a break-even program at a Medicaid reimbursement rate. Not all agencies are set up that way. So looking for ways that we can support and make this, successful and sustainable going forward, not just for agencies like mine. So other things you could do to get involved, we really need more agencies to join this consortium. So therapists that may be independent can certainly join the consortium. There's no cost to join the consortium. It's just having an understanding and agreeing to abide by the same rules. We may need some assistance with some advocacy efforts as we continue to work on how does the legislature look at these two, DHS 75 and 35, and what kinds of things should be considered within that. And also some funding supports depending on how this evolves over time. We spent a lot of time with Minnesota talking with them about their model. They're about 13 years in. They are providing services in 146 schools at this point. They have major funding from various insurance agencies and things like that. So we're using that information now to kind of plan for what this would look like in the future, because it is our goal that this be a program that is set up now that will really broaden and encompass and last, for decades to come, because this is where we can really do a lot of that upstream work. So that's where we're at.
So time check, we have 12 minutes. I don't want to rush you. Okay. Do you want to, should we have, Sarah's joined us. There was an emergency transport today, so she's a little bit late. Do you want me to put you, I don't have an August set yet.
It's up to us.
So I think what we'll do is we will work to see if we can get you on for August, for the whole period of time. So August, everybody, it'll be on prenatal exposure to substances, its impact on the babies, postnatal, like how postnatally for the mother and the infant, and some of the things perhaps that the hospital systems do to support that family. And then we could probably talk a little bit more about medication-assisted treatment and how that fits into all of this. So the whole next session is going to be just on baby. Baby and baby. So that's my charades today. So with that, do we have any questions for our speakers, Sam, Chad, or Krista, or Jen, about what they shared? Anybody have any questions? No.
How many schools will be included in the Tier 1 and Tier 2?
Great question. So we're starting again really with Wausau School District and DC Everett. There is also work being done with the schools in the western Marathon County area as well. Hannah Schomer from the health department is working with that group, and Aaron Ruff. We can't logistically, physically get out there yet, so we're kind of starting in the middle. I know that Bridge specifically can probably do part-time services in 4 schools. Peaceful Solutions is looking at their staffing, so we're sorting that out. The schools did have to realign their triaging a little bit because one of the districts had like 10 schools listed in Tier 1. And then one of the other districts did, ranked them 1 through 9. So we're having them reevaluate that a little bit with their staff just to make sure. I think that we realistically with the agencies and what they've committed, I'm actually just doing an analysis of that, maybe about 8 to 10 to start. Don't hold me to that number, but probably about 8 to 10 would be our goal. That would not necessarily be full-time. It may be starting at 1 or 2 days a week, seeing how things go, and then expanding from there.
Any other questions?
And it is a combination, sorry, just so that you know, between high schools, junior highs, middle highs, and elementary as well. So there was quite a mix of those higher identified needs amongst all of the different age groups.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I want to echo
again, what Jen said about the importance of advocacy, not just with the policies regarding the DHS 35 and whatnot, but also as far as funding goes, that government funding could be a huge source of making this sustainable within our community. So encouraging, local representatives to support funding for school-based mental health is something we can all take a few minutes to do via email or phone. So I'd encourage that as well.
Okay. Well, for the good of the order then, there are resources available up here. Please take. Turn in your evaluations and your CU forms if you need it. Share the video once it's available, and have a wonderful, sunny rest of your Tuesday.